right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. I'm Mark Graban from KaiNexus. I'm real excited. We've got a panel discussion today. So I'm going to have a couple introductory slides just to set the stage in terms of logistics and everything. And then we're going to be in a PowerPoint free zone otherwise. We're going to have great discussion with the topics that we have planned. We'll have an opportunity to work your questions into the mix. So I'm going to play the role of moderator today. And we're going to let everyone introduce themselves to a little bit more detail. But we are joined by Chris Burnham. He's a continuous improvement program manager with Wright Medical. We're also joined by Tyler Clements, who's a customer experience analyst at a company called AcenTek. And we're joined by Mohamed Saleh, Dr. Mohamed Saleh. Congratulations on your recent PhD, my friend. And he is, among other things, a founder and principal at a firm called Vizibility LLC. And you'll learn a little bit more about all of their backgrounds and what they do. So let's just go round robin, just going to go in alphabetical order off of last names here. Chris Burnham, if you could just start first, who are you? Where do you work? What else do you want to tell the audience about your background?
So my name is Chris Burnham, and I'm a continuous improvement program manager at Wright Medical. And I have about 18 years of experience in various fields or industries but the same things with continuous improvement have always kind of followed me around. I've had the opportunity to teach. I've had the opportunity to apply it as an operations leader. And now I lead a global program that's focused on employee-driven continuous improvement.
We're going to learn more about how you're adapting that to the current workplace and virtual times. So again, welcome, Chris, and then Tyler Clements, if you can tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah. So currently, I'm a customer experience analyst with AcenTek, as you mentioned earlier. I currently lead our continuous improvement program. So I'm involved with anything from lean strategy planning, training, facilitation to coaching. I currently serve as the education chair on the board of directors for Seven Rivers Lean Consortium, where really my primary responsibility is to help create learning and networking opportunities for lean organizations and practitioners. So in this discussion, I'll be talking about some of my recent experiences from both of those roles.
All right. And again, welcome, Tyler. And then Mohamed Saleh, if you can tell us a little bit more about you.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mohamed Saleh. I'm from Connecticut. So I've been in the continuous improvement world for the last close to 2 decades now. Primarily, my niche has been in healthcare, and for the last year or so, I kind of expanded outside of that as well. I teach at 2 universities for the last decade, Central Connecticut State University, as well as Elms College. And my focus has been in really understanding what principles organizations are striving for, and how do I design architects to complement that, and then what are the behaviors. And then I look at complexity thinking, distributed leadership, and stuff like that to kind of ensure a full organizational transformation centered at the people.
Yeah. And so, as we're all focusing on people as, the core of improvement, our people are now in different environments and different circumstances. So I'm going to kind of go back around in the other direction, before we dive into details about what you're doing around virtual improvement. High level questions starting with you, Mohamed. How has your workplace changed with COVID-19?
At first, my answer would have been drastically, but now it's kind of feels like, it's kind of settling in. But I had to figure out just technology-wise, how am I going to do this? I'm used to coaching in person, so how do I coach virtually? I'm used to going and flying out to my clients, so how do I do that in a virtual environment? My house, how am I going to set it up to be able to accommodate this new world? And so for me, it was just a lot of adjusting. I had to buy a mic. I had to, make sure I had to subscribe to a Zoom account. I had to do a bunch of things. My subscriptions probably had 8 or 9 of them that I had to make to kind of complement that physical space.
And then we'll go back to Tyler. So we've got 3 different types of organizations represented. We've got the consultant, and now we've got someone in a services company, and then someone at a medical device maker. But Tyler, how has your workplace changed, generally speaking?
Yeah, so just to provide just a little context, as you mentioned, we are effectively a service provider, but we're an internet service provider, and we serve 20,000 broadband customers, mainly in rural America, in Minnesota, Iowa, and Michigan. We've been in business for 70 years, and so to give you a brief look at what pre-COVID looked like, at least in terms of office personnel, I mean, essentially every single employee worked out of the office. And so we do have technicians and outside plant personnel that are outside, but primarily our office staff worked inside. And so, like many organizations over time, we'd been talking about how we might at some point look into an option to work remotely, but weren't exactly sure what that looked like, or how soon something like that could even happen. And so over the course of about 2 weeks, as businesses started closing, we went from all office personnel being in the office to working remotely. So a pretty huge shift for us. There were some employees that stayed in the office, but the majority, would be working remotely. So I guess what I would say is COVID effectively, forced us to expedite our future plans. And so I think it forced us to get really clear on some of the unique challenges and some of the preferred outcomes that we wanted for each position, and then have conversations around how we were going to make it work and how we were going to gauge success in the virtual environment. So we had to reprioritize a couple things. Some things were put on hold, but in general, I think it made us look more at the outputs or the results of our work, because obviously we couldn't observe a lot of the work being done. And so I think we realized that, when we started to focus on the results, it's no longer about where you worked, but how you're working and what the quality of the work itself was. So overall, it made us much more flexible. So it's been, sort of I know it's a terrible situation. For us, it's been really a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, and I was just going to make a comment, before throwing it to you, Chris. I'm going to play pseudo panelist, I guess, when it suits me here. But this idea of accelerating the future, I've heard comments about that. One of my clients in healthcare has really dramatically accelerated telehealth and video visit appointments, and that may, in a lot of ways, become a new normal. That may have come eventually as people see the value, and at least where that can be utilized. We may see some of that sticking around. So Chris, how has your workplace changed? I mean, for you personally, and then Wright Medical, you have manufacturing where you have a lot of work that by nature can't be done virtually. How is your workplace changing?
Yeah, you can't take a Mazak home and do complex machining in your garage or living room, right, or your kitchen table. But no, so I think I'd echo some of the comments that other people have med. So, our mission and purpose are unchanged. Our customers still depend on us, and so while we've had to make some adjustments, I think I could probably speak more to the adjustments I've had to make personally, in the sense that, and my team, is that our priority has always been to focus on results first and then location second. So in my work and the work that I do, I go to a lot of different places. So working remotely and working from home is kind of I wouldn't say a primary work mode, but maybe a binary work mode. I'm used to working effectively in the office and outside the office. I think working the changing environment has allowed us to really get those accelerated results that we were talking about, because we're able to focus our improvement work because we're seeing things from a different perspective now. And I know as lean coaches and improvement teachers, we're always telling people to step back and take a look and approach the problem differently. So, well, now environmentally you have to do that. So I think the principles of continuous improvement are unchanged. It's just how you figure out ways to apply them. And I think that Mark, you'd mentioned telehealth or telepresence. I've been during this time, I've been the consumer of one of those, and I thought it was easy. I was like, wow, I never want to go into a doctor's office ever again. But then I realized I don't want to take my own blood or have to do those types of things for lab tests. But with that, one of the things that we focused on is talking to one another and using platforms like Microsoft Teams, we use a lot with us. If you have a problem, something comes up, don't send them an email. Ask, hey, do you have a minute? And have a video chat one-on-one. I think that goes to keep us connected from a sense of community, but it also it holds us accountable for our words, deeds, and actions as well.
Yeah, and so there's a quick question that came in, and we're going to, I think, have a chance to explore this in more detail. But what a couple of people asked basically, like, what software tools are you using for collaboration? Are you using Zoom? Are you using other meeting collaboration platforms?
So for us, and I'm just as curious about this as everyone else is, but for us, primarily using Microsoft Teams. And we had set some of that up before, we got into this mode that we're operating in, but it really helped bring it to attention for everybody, for us to be able to use technology from that standpoint. I use Lucidchart. I found that that's easy as far as sharing and collaboration. And then you still have things like SharePoint, email. Use it, but Microsoft Teams has probably been the biggest one that I've used. And inside Teams, there's a suite of so many other software things like Microsoft Planner and Flow and BI. It helps drive home some of the things that you can. Forms. There's some great technology inside of Microsoft Teams.
Yeah. And there's a follow-up question. Microsoft Teams has a video component. It looks very similar to Zoom or like KaiNexus. We quite often now use Google Meet. I think the functionality is not all that different. We are going to talk, there's some questions coming in about virtual mapping, and that's one of our topics that we're definitely going to get into. But Mohamed or Tyler, what platforms are you using for meetings and communication?
I'll let Mohamed go because we use Microsoft Teams as well. So if Mohamed does something different, then we'll let him take this one on.
So thank you, Tyler. I personally, and with pretty much, I think unanimously, everyone have been really using Zoom as my main platform to just kind of converse. For me, the breakout feature has really been distinguishable from other ones. I've kind of dabbled in a lot, and I'm sure there's many more that I haven't touched yet. But I found Zoom became like more my comfort zone just because really the breakout feature is a significant one for me. And I like to see everyone's faces on the screen at the exact same time. So for me, Zoom had that advantage. And so I kind of migrated towards that. Now, during the conversations, and we'll get into that a little bit more later, but I personally use Mural to kind of jot notes, and we'll talk about mapping and all that. But that has kind of been my primary source of engaging others as we kind of done this. And I know this sounds kind of a little old school now, and it's funny that we're using the word old school for something like this, but I still use a flip chart behind me sometimes, and I still take notes while I'm talking to people. Yeah. And so just like Chris right there. So it's so for me, that has been working. I have migrated a little bit more, and I've gotten out of my comfort zone. I'm using Asana. I'm using to kind of almost supplement my virtual board that I used to have to kind of just track the to-dos and stuff like that. And I've from a sharing standpoint, I've really been migrating to Google Drive and Google, just all the Google options, because that kind of intertwines a lot of the things that I do too. So.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the methods, whether it's lean or other flavors of process improvement. One of the key principles is the idea of go and see. So that can be difficult, if impossible, right now. Tyler, I know you and AcenTek are doing some interesting things. Can you talk about how you're adapting that principle?
Yeah, and so for us, at least, we've been in sort of a unique situation as it is, and so we don't manufacture a product like you had mentioned earlier. We're a service provider, and so in our building, the majority of the tasks and activities that happen within our value stream are information and data flow. So at least within our critical processes. So going to the Gemba in those situations for us hasn't been a problem. We could just gather around the work areas to see and observe the work that's being done. What makes us a bit unique is towards the latter part of our value stream, we actually have technicians that have to go on site, whether that's to a home or business to finish our work, right? So that's installing modems or a router for a new internet connection, installing set-top boxes. So going to the Gemba for us, even prior to COVID, was sometimes difficult in those situations. We couldn't just round up, a team and just pop into somebody's house and see what they had going on. And so one of the things, and for years, actually, our technicians have been utilizing just their smartphones, taking pictures, recording videos to capture certain issues that they'd run into while they're out on site. One of the problems with that is, since we complete the work on site, they'd have to bring that video back, those pictures back, and you'd have to deliberate in a meeting and then go back out on site and fix it again. So obviously, excess transportation, just about every waste you can think of. And so what we've been trying to do is experiment with different methods and how could we, replicate going to the Gemba in a virtual environment. And so for office personnel, so those of you who primarily work on a computer, I think this is fairly simple, a simple screen share while in a video conference. And again, so for us, we use Microsoft Teams to accomplish that. But, again, if you have Google Hangouts, Zoom, GoToMeeting, it all works the same. So effectively, we assemble a team. We have the person who's experiencing an issue just share their screen, walk everybody through the problem. Obviously, it makes it much easier for people to see what's going on in an office environment with having a crowd over somebody's work area. But if it's something that, now that we're in a virtual environment and you want to be able to observe a work area, not just a computer screen, but let's say for us, we want to observe a technician on a customer premise. One of the things we've been, experiencing with is for them to utilize their smartphones, download the app for whatever video conferencing tool you use. So again, for us, that's Teams. So we would download Microsoft Teams, and then we would assemble a meeting, join that meeting, and have them utilize their smartphone to show the video component. Only thing there, you got to make sure you have good headphones so that you can continue to communicate while they're showing, what's going on. So, what that allows us to do is effectively, troubleshoot remotely. This is not something that you want to do for small problems. These are big problems, things that, for us would require engineering to get involved. But, again, it allows us to troubleshoot remotely and without having to need to travel back and forth. And, sometimes, you do run into quality issues. Not everybody's got Wi-Fi where you're going to be. Sometimes the cellular service isn't great, depending on where you're at. And so obviously just take a video, just record a video of that and then bring it back for a more traditional meeting where you can observe it together. I mean, people have been doing that for years, so that's nothing new. I would just say, having access to the live or real-time component via video conference is something that, you could consider, you could definitely try. Right. Just make sure that, you check with your legal team if there's any compliance issues from doing that. Customer information, proprietary process, whatever it is, just make sure that stuff's worked through. But it's worked really well for us.
Good. So we're going to turn, and a reminder to the attendees, for people are using the chat, which I think is great. But if you have questions, please do submit those via the Q&A, because I am monitoring that for questions, follow-ups to ask everybody. There's a lot of interest in virtual Kaizen events. That was definitely one of the topics we planned on discussing here today. So I'm going to start with Chris, and then we'll go to we'll start with Mohamed, and then go to Chris. If you can talk about your experience with a virtual Kaizen event recently, if you want to incorporate thoughts about how to go and see as you're telling us about that, Mohamed, if you can go ahead on that.
Absolutely. So this has actually been a very sensitive topic in the lean community to do or not to do. And I'm going to, admit that I was one of the skeptical people out there that said, it really can't be done. The human element goes away. You're really solving for the emotions and you're solving for the people side of things, and the virtual will take that away. And I had a client who, really was, pushed it off, but was really passionate about this Kaizen. And so we decided we're going to do this 5-day Kaizen. It was actually just a few weeks ago. So it's kind of a little fresh in my head. And so I'll speak a little bit about that. And I've learned a lot from that experience too, things that I would do different next time, and as well as things that were extremely successful. But I'm going to start with the pre-Kaizen stuff. And in the pre-Kaizen stuff, so we jumped in the Kaizen, and there's things that we did that was just by luck, and I would kind of advise you do it. And then there's things that we didn't do that I would say, in the virtual environment, these things are probably worth focusing on. So one thing is that in a physical or a non-physical environment, the sponsorship commitment is extremely important. And I think that speaks very strongly. Like if the sponsor isn't really committed to this Kaizen, the Kaizen pretty much doesn't have hope, regardless if it's physical or non-physical. I have found it in the virtual environment, you have to put extra emphasis on that because there's a lot more distractions that actually happen. And so I would say more sponsorship commitment in the pre-Kaizen in the virtual environment. One thing that we ran into in the pre-Kaizen was the data gathering. So historically in the physical, you would go to the Gemba, you would walk the floors, you would measure things on your own. And you would, tag, in my case, patients, 1 or 2 or 3 patients for that product, and you kind of would follow it. And that's it, your data. Even though your systems are telling you a million things, as a practitioner, that's pretty much what you're going to go with. In the virtual, that wasn't true. So we actually had to rely on the systems and the data they gave us. And so, there was a lot of debates of the accuracy of that data that came out of the Kaizen. And unfortunately, we spent a lot of time debating that accuracy, when if we would have done this physical, we would have had the chance to walk the floor pre that. So I think that's one challenge that I ran into. Stakeholder interviewing in a physical setting, when you walk the floor, you would actually engage into these people. So you would kind of get the feeling who's passionate about certain things, who's, going to be a little bit, I'll use the word, have a lot of pride in what they do and not really want to change. And so in the virtual environment, I felt like that was missing. I found that all out in the Kaizen itself. And so, the balance of having people that are passionate and people that are, cheerleaders, and that piece for me was kind of a surprise in the Kaizen, where in the physical, I would have caught that in the pre-Kaizen. So I think that's another challenge. Team size, every rule in the book tells you not to make a big Kaizen team. I break it almost every time, so I'll admit to that. But in the physical, if you have a team of 16 people, with the help of your facilitators, you could pretty much still do it. In the virtual environment, I tried to replicate that, and I'm going to tell you that was extremely too big of a Kaizen team. Like, I would say if I was to do it again, 12 would be my max number, and I'll explain a little bit more in that in the Kaizen.
Sure.
Pre-technology or pre-technology overview that we did do. So getting people oriented in Mural, because you could map things out as a team. Everyone's hand is in the pot, so they could actually put Post-its up themselves and move things around and draw arrows. We did a pre-Kaizen training, which in a lot of the Kaizens, you do a training beforehand. You just focus on the tools that are going to be used in the Kaizen and less about the technology, where in this one was more about the technology and less about the tools. So they got to experience Mural before the Kaizen, the week before, and kind of got comfortable. And there's some people that were very, you have some shop floor people here in this Kaizen. And so they did not have the comfort of using this technology, but they did in the pre-Kaizen. So they were comfortable going into it and just Zoom and breakouts and how it feels and stuff like that. So we got all that taken care of in the pre-Kaizen. I would say that's a critical step that you should not miss. We got lucky that we did it because some people were complaining that they're worried that it might not work. But if these people hadn't complained, I don't know if we would have done it. So I think we got lucky there, but it is a practice that I would carry on. And the last thing is, I'm going to talk about the virtual Kaizen right now, but there is going to be a distinguishing factor between a virtual Kaizen in a COVID times and a virtual Kaizen in non-COVID times, because I do think there's a huge value in virtual Kaizens moving forward as we evolve for the future. However, it might not, the non-COVID times does not mean we don't do virtual anymore. No, there's values in virtual and there's actually advantages of doing it, but the COVID does add a new layer to it that, I'll speak to. So we jumped in the Kaizen. There was a lot of time wasted in the beginning just to kind of make sure everyone was comfortable, test technologies, put together some ground rules. And I'm going to tell you, it is 100 times more productive virtually when every single person is looking straight at you, because they can't just walk away. They can't disengage. They're all like 100% focused, eyes on you when you're talking. And so everyone's attention I found to be in the moment. So huge benefit there. So whatever we lost in the beginning of getting everyone comfortable and just getting to know each other and introducing and people going a little longer, I think that was good. However, in the beginning, we didn't put a lot of ground rules in place, and we kind of had to stop, put more ground rules and move on because there were people speaking over each other. Mm-hmm. It's easier to speak on Zoom actually over each other, not harder. And so, but as a facilitator, you also have the mute option where you can just mute everyone. So I did have to resort to that sometimes. And I think it actually it was a huge benefit. There's a raise your hand feature. So as a facilitator, it was easy for me to see, okay, there's 6 hands up in the order they came in. Where in a physical world, some people are standing in the back. I might not see them. They might be in my blind spot. So I think that was extremely helpful. Now, I got very lucky in this Kaizen because I had 2 individuals who were kind of helping as leaders in this Kaizen who have very strong continuous improvement and facilitation skills. And I had one of my students who's in the master's program who was also part of this, Troy, and he's very very high end facilitator here that we're talking about, and has done Kaizens before and stuff like that. And he engaged in this Kaizen with me, but because of the team size, I wouldn't have been able to do it without those 3. Because they served as facilitators. They went into different breakout rooms, and I didn't in a physical environment. I might have caught that, but in the virtual one, I was like, you know what? Everyone's on the same screen. Do I really need that many facilitators? It's going to be easy. So I let that one go. And then when I realized I have an issue, I kind of leaned on them and they kind of stepped up and helped out. So I would say in the virtual environment, you need just as many facilitators as in the physical. It looks like you don't, but you actually do. And so that's kind of about the physical. The one thing I learned in doing the physical, and if you're using Zoom, this only applies to Zoom. I don't know if what other platforms would do this, but my first breakout rooms, I had 4 teams that I was breaking out. And so I created 4 rooms. Sounds like what anyone would do. But once you break out the rooms, you can't add more rooms. And so you would have to bring everyone back together, erase it, and then break out again into more rooms. So I got used to just creating like 7 or 8 rooms and only filling 4 of them. And then when 2 people wanted to talk on the side, pulling them out and throwing them in a different room. And that way I don't disrupt anyone. I didn't realize that until the afternoon of day 1. I think that's tip for yourself. If you ever want to do breakout rooms, double whatever number you need. Because you will need people to have side conversations around something specific or technical that they want to talk about. So that came out. I think one thing I didn't do, and I now in the future virtual Kaizens I'm going to do, is just have a Post-it pad behind me. I think that's important. Not everything could be done through Mural. There's some stuff that you just want to parking lot it, or you just, it's a good idea, but it's off topic, but you don't want to lose it and stuff like that. And people want to see that you caught it. Like they don't. And so like me jotting on a little notepad, it doesn't do it for them. Like they need to see it physical. So I had people repeating things over and over and over again around, did you capture this? Did you capture this? Did you capture this? So like I would suggest for any facilitator, and in my case, I had 3 other ones. They all could have had a Post-it pad behind them. And I think that would have resolved some of the questions that we were going to get. So that's the kind of the scope of the Kaizen itself. The one thing before I move on to post Kaizen is I did notice that if you have, the team size in a breakout room, anything over 4 is not productive. And so I found the teams that were 3s and 4s, actually 3s were like the ideal breakout room. Like those people took their root cause, went into it with a bunch of countermeasures, tested and got it done. One thing that we captured in the pre-Kaizen and we took out with us in the post-Kaizen is that we took the concepts of quick changeover. That's really what this is all about, is like what's internal, what's external. Everything that's external that you could do without being physically with the machine running, and in this case, the physical plant, okay, you could do virtually. And then everything that requires that physical plant, you have to be physical there. So we actually leverage the tools of quick changeover throughout this Kaizen as if it was a big quick changeover Kaizen with other tools within it. So 5S, standard work, all that stuff came inside the quick changeover concept. But that's all we did. We just said, okay, what could be done internally? What could be done externally? And then the stuff that could be done externally, we tried to optimize it or delete it. And the stuff that was required internally, we postponed to the 30-day report out. And that we said, let's get all these stuff out of the way first, and then we'll do the stuff that requires physical. Now, in the COVID times, that's why we pushed it out to the 30-day. In the non-COVID times, it could have been 3 days virtual, and then 2 days, Tyler, Chris, and Mark and I fly out to one client and go in there and do a physical. But we don't need to be there for 5 days. The client doesn't have to pay for the hotels and all that stuff that comes with it. So it's a cost saving for the other individuals too. So virtual, that hybrid internal external changeover concept, I think will apply for the future, regardless of what happens. With the COVID times, it makes it a little hard.
Yeah. And maybe before, did you still have more you wanted to say about post Kaizen?
The only thing about post Kaizen I wanted to say was that just the 30-day changes a little bit. It's not just a follow-up anymore about things that were in the Kaizen newspaper. It's actually, there's physical stuff that were countermeasures that are not tested yet. And so it's not a 2-hour wrap-up Kaizen newspaper meeting that you're putting together. No, there's sometimes, we're talking about making it 1 or 2 days because it requires that physical presence and it requires you to test things on site. And so the Kaizen, even though it was 5 days, it's really 7, because those 2 days might be out there. And so that's the only thing I want to say about post Kaizen is that it's not just a report out. There's actual physical testing in the same kind of concept as if it's a mini Kaizen on its own.
Okay. Well, thanks, Mohamed. So we're going to turn to Chris. And we had a question that came in from Adam, which I think tees you up well, Chris, and anything else you want to add about doing virtual Kaizen events. Did the length of a Kaizen day have to be shortened for virtual Kaizen? And also, he asked, did you make any modification for breaks just because of the realities of people working at home?
Yeah, so that's perfect. I found in personal experience that virtually 2 hours is about as far as you can go on a session or a question with Kaizen. The benefit of working where we work now is I left it open and said, hey, look, we're gonna go 2 hours, but if for whatever reason you have to get up and go take care of we have to offer a lot of grace right now. I mean, because everything's different for folks. So dogs, kids, some spouses that are working in a similar spot. So you got to give them a little bit of grace. But if you say up front, hey, we're going to go for 2 hours, people pretty much stay for 2 hours. Now you may do multiple 2-hour sessions in a day. So do a 2-hour block, give them 2 hours, and then come back after that and do another 2-hour block. But that's kind of what I found was most beneficial. But if somebody has to go, they have to go. I mean, don't hold them. Don't hold them in a virtual presence from that standpoint. One of the other things that you think about and Mohamed kind of alluded to that, is when you're in a conference room, you don't really see the people that are sitting beside you in the periphery or whatnot. But when you're on a Microsoft Teams call, you have everybody's facial expression. It's almost like nonverbal overload at first. So if you're not used to it, like you can see everybody. And the raise hand feature, Microsoft Teams just released that last week. That's been great in the sense that people can say, hey, wait, I've got a moment. The other thing that I found was helpful just as setting up an approach, it's similar to like what we do with webinars, and that having someone that's designated to be the moderator for your chat, right? So, using that chat feature, not letting anything go. So if there's a presentation, people do chat and put questions in the chat along the way. And then that moderator comes in and says, hey, we've got a question from Tyler. And he asks, and it makes Tyler feel like he's recognized. And then it also keeps the discussion going. And there's things that you may not have covered that you need to come back to and work through as a team.
We're going to take a quick pause. Questions are still coming in, and we still have a lot of other topics. But we want to make a few announcements about upcoming webinars and other resources that are available from us here at KaiNexus. So this is, again, part of our KaiNexus webinar series. You can learn more at kainexus.com/webinars. If you are a KaiNexus customer, like Tyler and Chris's organizations are, you can attend the monthly training team office hours with Adam and Matt. That's going to be June 11th, so next Thursday at 1 o'clock. And then our next open to everybody presentation style webinar is going to be held on June 16th. We've got a group of 4 presenters who are all affiliated in different ways with Purdue University. And they're going to be presenting on what they call a TP cubed approach to managing manufacturing competitiveness after the pandemic. And I would invite people, if you're not in a manufacturing company, they are going to be talking about supply chain issues that would probably apply in healthcare. Angus MacLeod is going to be talking about the people side of manufacturing enterprise competitiveness. I think there would be lessons for people in other industries. So we do want everyone to feel welcome to that webinar, even though they're all bringing very deep manufacturing experience. Roy Vasher was an executive at Toyota here in North America before retiring and getting involved in other things. So Roy, Steve, Ananth, and Angus are going to be all presenting together next in a couple of weeks on the 16th. We have other resources. We've got the webinar on-demand library. All of our past webinars are available there. There's a button on the side of the kainexus.com/webinars page. This webinar recording will be archived there. You can also find the webinars on our KaiNexus YouTube channel. We invite you to check out our blog at blog.kainexus.com. And we have a podcast series where, again, the audio from today's webinar will be there in our podcast feed. We encourage you to subscribe, basically any app or website where you might get podcasts. So that's the quick pause for announcements. And let's get back into our questions. So, and we have a lot of questions that came in from people on this topic. We had planned to cover around different styles of virtual mapping, whether that's part of a virtual Kaizen event or part just kind of standalone analysis activity. So Tyler, we'll start with you. If you want to kind of share what you've been doing in terms of virtual mapping, what tools have you used? What's different about trying to do this in a virtual setting?
Yeah, sure. So, for me, process mapping is one of the most effective tools there is in helping us understand our processes. And it's really not, as we know, just about creating the map. It's really the learning, that takes place while we're building and developing that map. That's what's important, obviously. And so, I always tend to think, having everybody in a room and we can use Post-it notes and move things around is as good as it can get. And so in our virtual setting, we've been playing around and experimenting with a few different methods. And so one thing you could do is you could use a screen share of your mapping software. So again, we would create a video conference in Microsoft Teams, and then we use Visio, which is a Microsoft product, to do our mapping. And you can facilitate that conversation and you can have people tell you what the process is. That might be how most people do it. You have one person facilitate, one person move the different shapes around on the screen. What I found that to be a bit more complicated than it needed to be, at least in a virtual environment. So oftentimes I would misunderstand somebody about what the process was or where it should go. In person, when you have those kind of issues, you just say, well, just come up here and show me where this should go. So you could, easily move things around. So initially, when I tried to facilitate everything with just drawing it myself, I ran into a bunch of issues of rework, extra processing. So to avoid that, I started looking into different ways, we could collaborate on a document in real time simultaneously. Yeah. So there's other, tools, Lucid, different things that have been brought up. What we use, just creativity before cost. And since we use Office 365, we just use PowerPoint. Mm-hmm. And so there's a feature within PowerPoint within Office 365 that you can edit documents in real time simultaneously. So we would start a video conference via Teams, And then, and as Mohamed said, we don't want more than, 5 people doing this at a time.
Yeah.
It can be, a mess. And so start the video conference, have everybody load the file and click edit at the same time. And then, what I would do is I would take the PowerPoint file, and whether it's a swim lane or just a regular process map, I would move the shapes to the left side of the screen. So I got your rectangles, your connectors, everything like that. And then once everybody's in there, instead of me just moving around, I have them go in and move things. And there's a little, flag when something's happening, when somebody's moving something, you can see something is being done. So I know not to touch that. And so, what I found is obviously it turned out to be much more engaging, much more accurate. And I think it just it just led to an overall better experience for those, rather than just sitting there watching me do something. I think the learning is much better being engaged. And so I would really encourage, if you have PowerPoint, to try that. If you have Google Slides, Keynote for Apple, I'm not sure of all the other platforms, if those would work or not. But, rather than going out and looking at purchasing a software to do that, just play around with what you already have access to and just see if that works out for you.
Yeah, I mean, along those lines, I'm going to jump in as a panelist just briefly. Healthcare client that I was working with, we had access to Google Sheets. So Tyler, exactly like you said, we could have multiple people moving, creating, editing in a truly participatory way instead of being a spectator, because that was free. It was available. But let's talk briefly, because Mohamed, there was a follow-up question. And there's confusion around these similarly named tools. There's Miro, M-I-R-O, I believe. Then there's Mural, which is like a painting on the walls, the way it's spelled. So they were asking, when you had mentioned Mohamed, did you say Miro or Mural?
Mural, M-U-R-A-L.
With the A-L, okay. Yeah. And any other thoughts on virtual mapping, Mohamed? And then I'll ask you, Chris.
So, initially, we were going in this Kaizen thinking of using Jamboard. It's a feature in Google, and it allows multiple people to do it. The only issue with that, and maybe it's in there and we just couldn't find it, was that the icons of mapping weren't pre-installed. And so what distinguished Mural for us is that it allowed you to create multiple sheets, just like a Jamboard. Really, there was absolutely no difference between the two. But it had all the icons and the snap features of Visio. And so it allowed us to draw lines, circle things, color code Post-its, change the size of the Post-its, which is a Jamboard issue. And so that's why we lean towards that Mural over the Jamboard. I would say if you already have Jamboard and these features are in there and we just haven't figured it out, then you're good there. But we found Miro, the other one that you talked about, Mark, was on our table of looking into. But when we went to Mural and we found everything that we needed in there, we just paused. We said, this works. Let's just go with it. And so for us, that mapping and having everyone in, similar to what Tyler was saying, everyone being able to do it simultaneously, people were doing different parts of the map at the exact same time. And then we just reviewed it all as a team, cut our mapping time almost by 50%. And we didn't have to worry about spelling issues or telling them about could you repeat that again? Because they were just typing it in themselves. So I think that helped out a lot.
Chris, what are some of your experiences here recently?
Yeah, so we've been similar to some of the things that have been said here. It's that we were using Visio and sharing control of the screen through Microsoft Teams. I hadn't thought about using the Microsoft PowerPoint, so I took the pen and jotted that down. In a virtual reality, I'd jot this down up here for you, Tyler. That was a great idea, but yes. I don't want to lose that. But I think, and then also along those lines, we have used collaborative documents using Microsoft Teams. Like, for instance, we are using it for Excel. We have used for PowerPoint, but there hasn't been that live editing at the same time. So I'm eager to try that one out.
Yeah, the only thing I would say on that, when you start doing that in PowerPoint or anything is just avoid the connectors until last, right? Let people move the shapes around. And then, if you know how to map, you go in there and just finish that off for everybody else, and then finish the job in Visio and upload it to wherever you need to go. But otherwise, it's just, you're Mohamed, you mentioned it's going to cut your time in half, and it's probably going to add 50% if you start getting with connectors and you got to delete everything. So just avoid those initially if you can.
Yeah. Well,
I do like in Visio, they do have there's a module out there you can purchase called EVSM, which is actually really powerful for value stream mapping. But I guess for unless you're coming up with really complex value stream maps, a simple process flow can be done with Microsoft, any of the Microsoft suite.
Yeah, I do know that Mural has and I'm not selling Mural here. Like it does have a significant amount of features that we didn't explore during this Kaizen that we said, you know what, let's just put all these on hold until we come back. But I think one of the things, Tyler, that you were speaking of is the connectors. Mm-hmm. Like I made that mistake like in the first 30 minutes of doing this, and we had to stop and said, all right, no more connectors. Let's just move Post-its around because like Visio, it drags every line with it.
Exactly.
And so we had to stop that. But there is a feature in Mural that after you're done with the map, you could just auto all the connectors together, which saved a significant amount of time. We did not do it, so I can't speak to it, but we manually did it. And then after we did it, someone told me about it. I was like, all right, I'll have to explore that. So that
should have written that down.
that might be a feature that's in there too that I haven't seen yet.
Yeah. So a question for Tyler and Chris, as KaiNexus customers, how are you incorporating KaiNexus into the improvement work?
Tyler, you want to go first?
Yeah. So for us, KaiNexus facilitates all of our continuous improvement. And to make sure that, I guess, we simplify it for employees, again, we use teams, sound like a broken record, but we have a specific team that's company-wide. Everybody in the company is included on that. And so they access KaiNexus through Teams. And we have single sign-on, so they don't have to remember passwords. It makes it very simple because everything is in Teams. But we use it to facilitate all of our projects, any sort of opportunity for improvement that somebody has while working remotely or anywhere. You can go in there and submit that idea. That has sort of a hierarchy built in of where that needs to go, depending on the impact of the problem potentially. And so we use KaiNexus to facilitate every component in project management along with our projects. So all of that for improvement happens within KaiNexus. And I would say the other thing is what we've really used KaiNexus for is to monitor engagement. I think that's been one of the biggest things in a virtual environment, is looking to see who's logging into the system, who's putting ideas in, so that people don't just feel left out in an island. It provides a great coaching opportunity for us to monitor what's going on. And so if somebody hasn't been in KaiNexus for a while, that's a conversation their leader can have with them. So really just to facilitate all of our continuous improvement in terms of the project management aspect of it and reporting on impact and different resolutions that way. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, I would echo that, Mark. I think the sites that I have that are the most productive are using KaiNexus. They're logging in every day, and they also have groups of champions that are CI leaders or CI facilitators at those sites, and that group is meeting every other week for an hour via virtually, and they're looking at the pipeline. They're looking at the Kanban of what came in new, what's planned, what's active, and then what's overdue. And they're talking collaboratively. And so that meeting is a really it's a safe environment. It's a nurturing environment. It's collaborative, and a lot of work gets done in that meeting because there's it's almost like a rapid Kaizen for the site where they're looking at multiple things and OIs at a time, and they're able to solve things or resolve things in that meeting, and then go back and close out with the individual who submitted the idea. And so we're still using the I guess the location summary a lot for myself and members of my team that do the management aspect of KaiNexus, we're looking to see when people have done logged into KaiNexus the last time. We're looking at location summary. We're looking at activity by person. Looking at that item curve is a quick way to judge whether you're on track or off track for what you have. And then we have a global call for all of our champions once a month where we go through those metrics. And so we keep it at a very high level. We recognize some individual contributors, but then also we're creating that positive, competition tension between the different groups. And then one of the things I love that we do the most is using the honor roll. We'll go through and site leaders will honor roll the different ones that they want out, and then we'll pull those out and use those as do some follow up, or maybe like a quick video with your cell phone, and just record the improvement, or get the person in their words to talk about the improvement, and send that out globally to give that person recognition of innovation, of ingenuity, of creativity. And then just the best ideas that you solve are usually the ones that are just so simple and everybody steps over it every day. And it's like, hey, I'm tired of you guys stepping over this. I picked it up, and look at what the results are.
So just I'm going to tee up. We're going to talk a little bit about what you've done with virtual training, but we've got a few attendee questions. We might do rapid fire. It might be as simple as yes or no for some of these questions. But has anyone used smart glass technology, smart glasses, to go and see or provide views for remote team members?
No. If they make you smarter, I'll buy a pair. I mean, I use all the help I can get.
There's a question for you in particular, Tyler. Have your team members used, I guess this is a Microsoft product, Dynamics 365 Remote Assist with Microsoft Teams?
Yeah, not that I'm familiar with. I mean, I'm not too sure what that even is, to be honest with you. So I can't say that we have or not, unfortunately.
Okay. All right, that's fine. And then there's a question here. Has anyone used Bcast for collaboration or brainstorming, or no?
No.
All right. So a couple yes and no questions. All right. So on the topic of virtual training and virtual events, everyone has something to add. Tyler, let me start with you. I recognize some books in the background. I see the Lean Startup. Is that good to great above it in the red?
That's the Business of Expertise.
Oh, okay.
Different book. Yeah.
No measures of success.
Oh, that's in there. That's in there.
I wasn't criticizing, and I wasn't. But you've been doing some virtual book clubs. If you could talk about that, Tyler, as a way of learning and developing people.
Chris, was that you guys doing the book club?
Yeah. So
that was Chris. Okay, sorry.
But we would definitely go pull out of Tyler's library. That's for sure. So it's kind of neat. This kind of grew organically. It wasn't a top down or approaches that small groups started forming and wrapping themselves around different groups. So we've had Multipliers by Liz Wiseman and Greg McEwen. Great book. If you haven't read it, I would absolutely recommend it. We're got a group starting up about Drive by Daniel Pink, Making of a Manager. My personal favorite, Out of the Crisis by Deming.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I'm sure all of us have read at some point in time along the way. It's great to pull that book back out and read it again and just have a focused discussion about it, because crisis can also be knocked out of a sense of comfort, and it's a way to think of how are we gonna solve the problems that are in front of us, and the 14 points still they apply regardless from that standpoint. But what I love about the book clubs is they keep them small. They may have multiple groups reading the same book at the same time, but it's no more than 7-8 people assigned to that group. There's a facilitator. There's a set of questions, one chapter a week, but it keeps the mind sharp, and it gives folks something that they can come together and have camaraderie about, and something in common for discussions. And I think that also goes a long way in building that sense of community, which can get lost sometimes when we're all doing the short commute up the steps and not putting on pants without a drawstring. You need to maintain that sense of community and that sense of team with your teammates.
Yeah, I've got many paper copies around, but it's also on my phone, on my Kindle app. Out of the crisis, I think he was decades ahead of his time in a lot of ways. But and so it took me 50 some minutes to mess up. So I did a Kaizen. I did a freeze pane across the top row of who was which column. So sorry about that mix up. But Tyler, you and AcenTek have been doing a lot of different things around virtual development, if you can talk to that.
Yeah. So, one of the things that we've been doing during this time is really to try to develop or just rethink our training materials to try to really focus on the individual learner themselves. And so I guess what I mean by that is, people obviously learn in different ways. And historically, when we would conduct training within our organization, it would be in a classroom setting, it'd be at the Gemba. And when you do that, obviously you get a combination of different traditional types of learning. So you get visual, auditory, reading, writing, more tactile things like kinesthetic methods. And then, at least for me, when we moved into the virtual environment, for whatever reason, and even, obviously before COVID-19, we've done virtual webinar, different things. It just feels different. So as an example, I wouldn't have any problem going to a week-long conference for 6 to 8 hours a day, just nonstop, going and doing a networking event at night, repeat. But, it's tough for me to sit on my computer for 2 hours in a day straight, right? So I guess the question for all of us is, why is that? And so we've been really looking at redoing our training. And so I just think we're missing out sometimes on the engagement piece, and there's a certain energy that, people have when we're all in the same room. And sometimes we just don't have that at home. And so one of the things we've been asking, is home conducive for learning? Is it a good learning environment? Where there's so many distractions at home. And a lot of times we do it just because we have to, but how effective is it? And so what we've been doing, we've been looking at, trying to understand the effectiveness. How do people learn? Obviously, if you do more hands-on learning, you're more likely to remember it, and that's because you're utilizing multiple senses. So one of the things, again, we've made a priority is to create that content in different formats. And so we did an assessment late last year, company-wide, to sort of help gauge our lean culture in the organization. And so that helped us uncover a lot of things that we could still improve. So we already had that as kind of a head start. And so what I've been doing is putting together content. And so obviously presentations. So I'd be recording those sessions, putting them into videos, which makes it really good for somebody who's a visual learner to have something on demand. And then I've been trying to repurpose those videos, extract the audio and make something like a podcast out of the presentation. So, that's really good for, people who have excess free time. We're not driving to work anymore. There's just maybe some more downtime than there is at the office for, certain types of positions. And so, it's just something to have on, while you're working potentially or going for a walk. So, podcasts have been really good. And then off of those, you can create additional content, blogs, you can create white papers. You could have somebody transcribe audio if that's what you wanted, or what you can do is you can collaborate and have, some of your employees, write white papers on things that they're learning, right? Write blog posts on things that they're learning. You can upload that to, your intranet site. For us, it's Microsoft Teams. But the question still remained is how, do you get more of the hands-on learning in the virtual environment? And so one of the things we've done, as Mohamed mentioned earlier, is the breakout rooms. And so within Teams, it's a lot more difficult to set up. They don't have the breakout function. But just as a quick example of how this might look, so if we were doing a training session on, say, standard work, what it is, why it's important, I might start a meeting with 25 people, and we start going through the presentation. And then when it's time to do a group activity, what I would do is break them out into smaller rooms and just make sure it's no more than 4 or 5, as Mohamed said. And so if you do have Zoom, I would recommend using Zoom for that. but you can definitely use Microsoft Teams. It just takes a lot more planning in advance. And again, if the training is on standard work, some of you are probably familiar with the activity of draw a pig. So that's basically an activity that's done to show the importance of standard work and how it helps reduce variance and improve quality. And so, in a group setting, you just have everybody with very generic instructions, draw a pig, show everybody, how the pig looked. And of course, initially every pig looks different, right? And so if you're doing this remotely, you just have them hold up the picture to the camera. Very simple, accomplish the same thing, but now we're driving engagement with that. And then, you go through the rest of the presentation, work through the standard work document at the end, have them hold up the same document or their pig again, and it's, they're almost identical. So that's just one example of how you can, do group activities remotely. We just have to sort of think through how we can do that again. But I mean, it does take a lot of time, but this is something I think that we're going to continue doing when we get back in the office, is just have so many different methods and content for people to really just consume it however they want in their free time or so.
Okay.
Yeah. So Mark,
I just want to make a quick announcement, and I want to ask, I've got a follow-up from Mohamed. We are running a little bit over. We still have 151 people here, so thank you. If you have to duck out, we are recording until the end, and we will post that. But I'm sorry, what was that, Chris?
No, I was just going to say one of the things that we use is we have Cornerstone as a global learning platform for the company. And then with that, we've got a subscription to LinkedIn Learning. And so there's anything that you can think about, almost like searching a library. You can search for a specific topic. And in one of our meetings, we try to set up that there's a scribe and a moderator for every meeting, just a good meeting practice. Well, there was an employee who had never been the scribe before. She went to the Cornerstone platform and looked up being a good meeting scribe, self-trained for 30 minutes or so, and then came back and was spectacular. And and the person who was leading the meeting says, that was great. I thought that you did a great job. She said, well, I went on LinkedIn Learning and I learned how to do it. And so it's don't limit people's ability to self-direct and self-train, because they'll amaze you every time.
Cool. Now, Mohamed, I wanted to ask you, I think you were one of the first, if not the first person I saw who had pivoted to doing a virtual conference. If you can share some of those experiences and what you learned from facilitating something that way.
Yeah. There's benefits, pros and cons of being the first at stuff. So I'm a managing partner of a company called M+, which primarily does membership and conferences. And our first, we had planned to do a conference before COVID hit, and then when it hit, it just accelerated the process for us. And so one of the things that we had to do is we actually had to change our entire lineup of what we were going to talk about, because we had to address the immediate need. And I think sometimes the conferences, and I present at many, and honestly, because they're virtual, it's cut down on travel significantly. So that's been a huge plus. But a lot of times we don't present on what the customer really needs. We present on what we know. And so we actually, we had everything in place. We were about to go live. And then, Crystal Davis is one of our partners, and Paul Critchley, both of them kind of stopped the line and said, but is that really what people want? And so we did a little bit of understanding what the customer needs are. And it was really, how do you lead during crisis? Leaders don't know how to do this virtually. They haven't experienced this. So we had to pivot the entire conference at that topic, and we had people already signed up. And so we had to send apology emails and stuff like that. And no one minded it. Actually, everyone appreciated that happened. One thing of doing a virtual conference, though, is that we had to hire a moderator for the whole entire day. So that they could actually do everything that would have been done in a physical one, because we didn't really understand how to do this. So we actually went out, looked at someone who's proficient in a virtual environment, not someone that's new, but someone's been doing it for years. We paid this person to come in and actually be our kind of backbone for this whole thing. So that's highly advisable, still advisable. Now, if you have someone on your team that knows that stuff, that's great. We did not. before that time, I didn't even know that Zoom had a breakout feature. I didn't have an account yet. So so there's a lot of things that I learned from that. I didn't know that there's a Zoom webinar versus just a normal Zoom. So I had to purchase the Zoom webinar. So there was that aspect of it. We had to have someone on our team dedicated to field questions, so that we don't get interrupted as we go. And that was a huge help, which was different than the person that was kind of the backbone of recording and clipping and all that. And the last thing I would say that we found to be significant is that, so I'm just going to speak about myself. I can't say this is not in general, but I go to conferences, to give back, to learn, and to socialize. And so networking for me is like the most important part of a conference. And so when you go virtual, that almost feels like it's been taken away from you. And to some extent. So we had to actually, between every 2 sessions, we had to bake in a networking social event. And we had to cut down the actual time. So instead of it being 50-minute sessions, we had to go to 25-minute sessions. And then after every 2 25-minute sessions, we gave everyone a half hour of just networking. We created a few breakout rooms that people could go in there. And then we had the general room that you could just stay and talk to different people. And that allowed people to go see their kids, back to what Chris was saying, that just the flexibility of doing this. And then they would come back, we'd give them 2 more. And then again, another, and we got that the more social aspect of it, the networking aspect, was actually a piece they were missing, because it was 3 weeks after the COVID hit. So people were at that peak of wanting to talk to other people. So that, I think for us, that was the virtual conference aspect of it that we found significant.
Yeah, well, thanks. And, just around virtual networking, Mohamed, you and I have participated in, there's one group that I organized. Our friend Paul Critchley organized one that I forget if you were on, but I think that's really important in this day and age. And for what it's worth, I would encourage people, to schedule those, and don't post a link publicly on social media. I know somebody who got burned by that, and I learned what Zoom bombing was. That was before Zoom bombing hit the news. That was a real thing. We were victimized by that, but we're not as bad as a school being hit by that. We were a bunch of adults, but still. I think doing virtual discussion groups. I've facilitated a virtual book club on measures of success, virtual happy hours. So sometimes just to connect with people you already know, even not just to talk shop, but just to catch up and check in on how we're doing. We've done a lot of that within the KaiNexus team. We have kind of standing regular check-ins. We were doing it daily. We're now doing it 3 times a week. We've got a Friday happy hour. We're doing virtual huddles, as I know a lot of organizations are. So there's that balance of focusing on the work and focusing on the people. And sometimes it's worth getting together and saying, we're not going to talk about product roadmaps or future sales leads. It's social, because, the people that are in the KaiNexus offices together normally aren't getting that right now. And we've tried to replace that virtually. I think it's been important. We had a couple of the questions that came in related about simulation. And Tyler, I know you touched on, kinesthetic activities, simulations, learning exercises. Any thoughts on virtual lean simulations that help convey different lean concepts?
Something I've seen and just trying to think through how we would do this with the technology, but just the whole concept of learning, the PDSA methodology. So is there a way to use a PowerPoint? Is there, and again, collaborate in real time? Is there a way to do that activity where, we start off and I know there's a card game, right? So, you lay out all the cards and you just scatter them all over, and they have to organize the cards and put them in order by suit. Could you create virtual, cards within PowerPoint? And could you have a team of people move things around and time it, and then, you teach, okay, and that was sort of, the do act. Now we need to, study and adjust and keep with those cycles. I'm not too sure. That's a couple things that have been in my mind. We haven't really gone through much of that yet, outside of just generalized concepts of like I talked about standard work and others. But I want if anybody else has ideas, please reach out to me. I'd love to know more ways.
Put them in the chat.
We put them in the chat. Yeah, and then I'll just tell you what they are. Yeah. So definitely. If other people have experience with that, would love to hear it. But I think it all revolves around just, engagement, getting more people with hands-on learning as much as we can. And for us, it's been utilizing Teams and something like a PowerPoint or a Word document, completing it, together. So I don't have any, specific activities outside of, what I've mentioned, but, reach out to me and if we can connect and we find some things, we'll keep each other in the loop.
Somebody asked about things like Google Glass. I'm surprised nobody's brought up VR goggles yet. Is it possible to do some sort of virtual reality simulation? Maybe that future will be accelerated a little bit.
Yeah. So Mark, I've been looking into that. There is. I've spent, I think, probably the last 3 months looking into those technologies, and they haven't really pivoted to the speed that I thought they would because of everything that's going on. It's a lot of them teach you how to, I think that the most advanced one I found was to teach you how to present virtually. So they simulate that there's a conference and you could present, but those people aren't real people. And so I was like, okay, well, if you already have gone that far, you could just, then just clip them in on the other end, and you're done. And so, no, I'm struggling to that has not come out yet. Yeah, that is not something I've been finding.
Yeah,
but if someone found it, please, again, below, let us know.
There's a couple other things we wanted to touch on include virtual coaching. I know, Chris, you've been doing some of this, and I'm interested to hear more of how you're incorporating some TWI or training within industry methods as you do that.
Yeah,
that's
so
old
I think
school, right? TWI, but
it is old school, but it's still cool, right?
Yeah.
But no, I keep my TWI job relations card right here, right at my desk, right at hand's length, because when you're having, I use it for my one-on-ones, for that I have every week, and they know to expect it. So if I don't have the card, they call me out on it, which that's when behavior has baked in, it's taken place. But it makes sense, and really TWI kind of helps focus the conversations in one-on-one meetings and one-on-one coachings with folks, because it's the basics are let each worker know how he or she is doing, and point out ways to improve, give credit when due. And I don't think you can understate that anymore right now. I mean, people need to hear good job. They need to hear, hey, I love the way that you did that. And you can't. The note says, tell the person while it's hot. Don't wait a week. Tell them right away. And now you can log into the keyboard. Microsoft Teams has a chat function built into it. Hey, man, good job. Or hey, that was great stuff that you did in that last meeting. That makes sense, right? This is a big one. Tell people in advance about changes that will affect them. Mm-hmm. All right. And tell people why, and work with them to accept the change. One of the unwritten rules for our group is no surprises. If it comes up, it comes out. And there shouldn't be any fear about sharing news. Whether, when you take the adjective off of news, whether it's bad news or good news, and you're sharing news, you're communicating, and you're helping the team. And then make the best use of each person's ability. Now is, we're finding out who's great with technology. We're finding out who's great with communication and presentation. We're finding out who's great with slides. We're finding out who's not great with those things. So I mean, I think about this when we first started with KaiNexus a few years ago. Someone put as an OI that everyone in the department needed to go through Microsoft Excel training, and I remember thinking that's going to be expensive, right? I need to go understand that. So we go up and we have a conversation. It's like, well, why do you feel like your whole department needs Microsoft Excel training? And the individual goes, well, I didn't know how to make this kind of chart. So I figured if I didn't know, everyone else probably needed help too. And literally the person one cube over goes, I know how to make that chart. Right. I can help you with that. I'd love to help you with that. And then the person in the cube behind says, I want to learn how to do that too. And before you know it, you, instead of spending 60 grand and flying a trainer in and doing high level training, we just leveraged the internal capacity that we had. And that never would have happened without having a conversation and then, and then having that conversation in a very public way, right? Not saying, hey, come in here in this room. It's like, workspaces are collaborative. So, when you're trying to make the best use of each person's ability, when you're on a call, ask for help, right? Say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Does anybody know how to do this? I'm working on this for a different project. Hey, anybody having familiarity with this? You'll be amazed what comes out just by raising your hand and asking a question.
Great tips. Thanks, Chris. Mohamed, I know you've been doing virtual coaching work. How are you facilitating that? How are you incorporating different technologies?
So for that, I've primarily been still just using using Zoom as my main platform. The only thing I've done differently is I did a little bit more prep in advance. In a physical setting, you could read body languages a little bit more. You could, you could tell people to go test things that maybe make them feel uncomfortable, where in the virtual setting, it's hard to ask them to do certain things or to kind of push them out of their comfort zone because they're already out of their comfort zone to begin with, just by being virtual. So there's a lot more empathy, I think, in virtual coaching that I find, at least, that I had to kind of put in front and center when I'm coaching someone, that it's not just about the problem that we're trying to solve here, but there's so many other factors that need to be considered now: the home factor, the loss of job factor, all these other factors that they might be going through emotionally. So I find when I'm coaching people that I'm not just coaching to the problem. I'm just trying to keep this person motivated to want to do one little baby step. And there has been coaching calls that I didn't even talk about the problem. So how are you doing? How's the family doing? How are you guys surviving? Stuff like that. And, who's sick in your family? In these kind of conversations, we didn't talk about the problem at all because it wasn't the time to talk about it. So I think from a coaching standpoint, virtual coaching standpoint, especially in the COVID times, I think empathy had to kind of come first. The problem, if you got to it, had to come second.
Yeah. So focus on the work and the focus on the person.
Yeah.
And maybe the other order during challenging times. Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, family is the most basic unit, but the next level up is community. I mean, we're all a member of a neighborhood. We're all members of teams. We're all members of organizations, of consortiums. But I mean, you can't let the fabric of community spread because or disintegrate. You got to maintain those personal connections. I think that, it's one of the challenges early on. One of the things that we challenged our team internally is reach out to two people that you interact with, but then you don't do it on a daily basis, and just check on them, see how they're doing. Right. Ask them what's going on. And, 2 turns into 10. And before you know it, you've got, for continuous improvement guys, you've got a long list of the next set of projects that you're going to go working through, but it all starts with, hey, how are you doing? How are things in your world?
Yeah. And I want to give a shout out, because I already mentioned KaiNexus, I think, is doing a great job of this. I also want to give credit, jumping in as panelist again, the firm value capture that I often subcontract through, because they are, very principles based around the Shingo principles, and in particular, oriented around safety. It's very sincere and noticeable, their emphasis on safety, as we even consider going back on the road now, potentially with healthcare clients and everything that's involved with travel and being on site, and the emphasis on our well-being all around has been very strong and very, very welcome and very, very helpful. And we know there's no compromises to be made when it comes to being as safe as safe as we want to be. I was going to say as safe as possible, but there's never 100% safety. Never 100% risk elimination is what I meant to say. But emphasizing, physical safety, psychological safety, professional safety altogether is even more important in this day and age. A couple other things, and then we'll wrap up. Tyler, you'd been doing some work, while people are working from home. I wanted to ask you about, we often think of 5S as a workplace activity, and now that our workplace is home, what have you been doing with 5S?
Yeah, same concept. For us, it hasn't changed a whole lot. Really overall the same principles. Going through the process, make sure we're sorting out everything, getting rid of things that we don't need. It's not just your desk area. For us, we've been focusing a lot of attention on our file structure. Now is a good time while we're at home and we have some free time to clean up a lot of those files that have just gotten completely overwhelming to look at, for so many years. And so we've had people focusing on that aspect of it. Just making sure you go through, you set things you need. The shine aspect, in COVID times, making sure everything's sanitary. So they go through the process, but I think Chris might have alluded to it earlier. Utilizing Teams is making sure people take picture, before and after, and share it. So what's the improvement you made? What's the impact that it had? So that we can continue to keep people in the loop. It also gives people a little insight into their work area. So there's a little personalization that goes on there. It's not too different, right? It's just the same things we've just been playing around, primarily with file structures and going from there.
I think of, you talk about files. I think credit for this goes to my friend Dan Markovitz, who, by the way, he's going to be presenting a webinar for us in July. So that's not yet formally announced. But I used to be, it's the engineer in me, like really precise about throwing emails into very precise, well-defined folders. But I think the idea came from Dan. Like my Mac is very good at searching for files. So I've become less particular. I still have folders for mail and for files, but I think of like the possible over-processing of folders versus just typing a word or two and boom, there's the file at the top of the list. Some of those practices maybe evolve with technology, or sometimes it's, hey, whatever you're comfortable with. That's one little change I've made. Chris, I was curious to pick your brain about what you're doing around the idea of tiered huddles. I think there'll be a lot of interest to that. We still have a lot of people who have hung on. What are you doing, in terms of, well, first off, if you could explain maybe for people who don't know what you mean by tiered huddles, and then how has that been different virtually?
Yeah. So, as I said earlier, our mission and purpose are unchanged, and tiered meetings are kind of the heartbeat and the cadence for how a lot of our groups operate. And so, when you think about a tier, think about layers, right? And that first tier is closest to the product. It's closest to the customer in that sense, and that's so you have a tier one. You have tier two, which is going to be supervisors that help support that. So the tier one would be a cell. Tier two would be a supervisor over several cells. Tier three would be, I would say, management, and then tier four would be senior management for that site. So for the tier one and tier two, for the meetings that are taking place closest to the product, those meetings are still taking place. Like they're still having, and there's a set agenda that they talk through, safety, quality, delivery, cost. Our internal and continuous improvement program is called Spark, which is, see, plan, act, review, keep improving. So Spark's on the agenda, and then reward and recognition. And so they go through that every day. And so the benefit of tier meetings is that they integrate with one another. So items that need to be escalated from tier one, up to tier two, work. Right? You escalate those. And then if there's items that need to be cascaded from a communication standpoint, they go down. So for the higher level tiers of 3 and 4, where you have people that, because we're trying to protect the health and safety of the people closest to the product. Those are for more virtual from that standpoint. So 2 things have come out of this. One is that you need to remember that the quality of the meeting is the quality of the people, right? It's just saying you have a structure doesn't. It's like having a house without furniture in it, right? It's bare bones. It's kind of boring, and no one wants to live there. Mm. But so the people and the quality of the meeting comes out of that, and then for the folks that in the past would physically be at the meeting but now can't, they're having to learn how to ask better questions, right? So you can't just say, "Hey, what happened in the meeting?" Right? You have to say, "Okay, well, I noticed on this metric that that we're off target on this. Can you help me understand what the discussion around it was, or what are some of the activities that we need? What support do you need from me to be able to take care of that?" I know that there's folks out there that have mixed feelings about tiered meetings, but tier meetings, huddles, whatever, you have to have a structure and an agenda, and you got to have good quality discussion with the people. And I'm really proud of the way that we've been able to perpetuate that, and we've gotten better at it as time's gone on. I think we talked earlier in regards to accelerators. This is one of the areas that we accelerated the best.
Well, so speaking of good quality discussion, like we've had here, I think I do need to bring things to a close. So I want to again thank Tyler, Mohamed, and Chris. Thank you for the discussion here. Chris, there was a question. If you could type into the chat box or
doing it right now,
what that acronym is. But again, the recording of this will be available. We invite you to come attend other webinars. You can learn about that at our website, www.KaiNexus.com/webinars. Hopefully you'll join us on June 16th with our group from Purdue University, and that you'll subscribe and be with us for all of the future webinars. Maybe one other thing I'll throw out there, if anybody listening has also been doing virtual improvement work, reach out to me, mark@KaiNexus.com. Maybe we'll put together another panel and hear from the experiences of others. I see a question that came in the recording. For one, everyone who registered, you'll get an email sent to you with a link. So it'll be on our website, it'll be in our podcast feed, and it'll be in our KaiNexus YouTube channel. So thank you everybody for attending, and thanks to all 3 of you for sharing what you've been doing, what you've been experimenting with, what you've been learning. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Mark.
Great. Thanks for being here. Great job. Thanks.